Breaking news! That's right, we're back with more breaking news 18 hours later. I'm Espo, he's Gerald, and the Phoenix Suns have a new head coach just hours after letting go Frank Vogel. Mike Budenholzer, come on up. You are the next head coach of the Phoenix Suns. Gerald, initial thoughts?
That was fast.
Yes.
That was very fast.
Or have they been talking to him for a week? I don't know.
That's also debatable. We are also 2 for 2 on golf tournaments with breaking news. So there's that. That's good.
We were at a golf course 30 minutes ago and got all the way here. So
that's dedication. No, I mean, he was a guy that I had on my list last year around the same time when we were having the same conversation about who's going to replace Monty Williams. And I feel kind of similar now as I did then. Like, it's a good hire. It's one that is going to come with its shortcomings. But I do feel like with the personnel that the Suns have and their need to get up more 3-pointers, I think Budenholzer can help them there. I think he's a balanced head coach in terms of having an offensive system and being able to field competitive top 10 defenses with the right personnel as well. Whether the Suns have that, we'll get into that. But, it's a lot of people are going to see it as a lateral move. A lot of people are going to be underwhelmed because it's a retread or whatever you want to call it. But Budenholzer is one of the winningest coaches in NBA history. Like, he's good. He's won a championship, and we are obviously very familiar with that championship. But I don't know.
The complaints. There was no culture, no buy-in. Felt like things weren't under control at times, right?
Yeah.
Mike Budenholzer takes no shit from everything that I've seen. He's a guy that holds big names responsible. He's a guy that tries to do what's best in their interest, even if it's not exactly what they want to do in terms of minutes played and things like that. I don't think you're going to hear anything about a locker room not being under control, that there isn't a voice or a leadership in place from a coaching perspective. Now, will they buy into that? Will that work? We'll get into that, like you said. But to me, this checks a lot of those boxes in terms of being able to handle that. He has a defensive system that works. He has an offensive system that he believes in. Both have been efficient and effective in his time in the NBA. He also had 17 years under Greg Popovich as an assistant coach. He started in his 20s. He actually was in Golden State with Pop as an assistant coach, and then moved to the Spurs with him. Was actually supposed to play for him in college at Pomona College, but he was with him as that entire Spurs culture, an entire Spurs dynasty was built from the ground up, and then continued to win with different pieces. So this is a guy that I think understands culture building as well. And we were talking, Lindsay and I were talking about that yesterday, that's a big thing that needs to be done here. So all in all, from those points, I think he checks the box. Now there's talk that, does he adjust well in the playoffs? That's been debated. But I'm also going to worry about those things when we get to that point.
Right.
You need to establish that voice, that culture, that ability to win, and figure out what you were doing from a whole plan standpoint. And I think Budenholzer will come in and have that. And part of me wonders, and this is pure speculation, but if he was high on their list last year, but he wasn't ready to coach because his brother had just passed away. And maybe that was a year away, because this is a guy, and we can talk more about it, but this is a guy that has ties to Arizona, grew up a Suns fan, and has said that this was a dream job for him before. So all in all, I like it, but like any of these hires and anything that's happened over the last 3 years, I take it with a grain of salt, and I need to see results.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of questions, and we'll get into the pros and cons of this hire, I'm sure. But to your point about the holding stars accountable, like, Frank Vogel was a coach that, looking ahead to the playoffs, was known for making really good playoff adjustments and that type of thing. But as we saw this year, it doesn't matter if you are outmatched from a roster standpoint or if your players just haven't fully bought in, if you've kind of lost the locker room or whatever you want to call that. So that's my biggest thing that I'm keeping an eye on with this new hire is a guy who has done a good job in the past of holding his star players accountable, of getting them to buy into his system, even if it's maybe a little bit outside of what they're used to. Is he able to bring that here? Because if he is, then great. Like, then we're going to have a team that was top 10 in 3-point efficiency actually shooting enough threes finally. But if not, we're going to have a very, very noticeable clash of styles where one coach wants one thing and the players continue to jack up mid-range shots because that's their comfort zone. So if Budenholzer can get them on board, then you're looking at something that could be really potent offensively. But if he cannot, we're going to be ending up in the same exact spot that we are right now next year. And that's the thing that concerns me, because the failures of the Suns were not just on Frank Vogel, as much as people are going to try to spin it that way. He wasn't a scapegoat. He had his share of the blame in that. Mm-hmm. But a lot of what he wanted to shoot a lot of threes. It was part of their game plan. It was part of Kevin Young's game plan. As he's talked about at BYU, they wanted to get up more threes, but they also understood that these guys are good at the mid-range. Is there going to be any budge in that? Is there going to be give and take? Because I don't know. Like, you have inherently 3 stars that like to operate from one area of the floor, and you have a head coach coming in that historically, except for one season of his career, all of his teams have ranked in the top 10 in 3-point attempts. The Suns were nowhere near as high, and we can look at that actual number there if we want. His teams have ranked 2nd, 7th, 6th, 16th, 7th, 2nd, 4th, 8th, 5th, and 4th in 3-point attempts over the years. That's with the Hawks and the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, the Suns have the personnel for it, but is Devin Booker going to be taking more pull-up threes? Is Kevin Durant going to be okay playing off the ball? Is Bradley Beal going to be functioning more off the ball? These are things that I'm going to need to see in Mike Budenholzer's system. And we've seen him with the inside-out offense, the 5-men-out offense. Mm-hmm. They don't have the personnel for that in terms of having a legit stretch 5 yet. That could change. That could change, but they don't have it as of right now. So you have to make moves there if that's the plan.
Yeah, look, Devin Booker has always seemed pliable in terms of things, and we've seen him shoot threes at a high clip at times. I think it helps that Grayson Allen has been in this offense as well before, but those are concerns. And does Budenholzer adjust, or does he have to tell these guys, you do this or we're going to have problems? And does he have the voice to handle that in the locker room and do that? And I think that's a valid question with this. And does he have the horses defensively? Because Frank Vogel was a very good defensive coach as well. Obviously, that was his one main focus, but they didn't set him up with the personnel. Can you get Mike Budenholzer enough defensive-minded guys to make his defense work while also trying to find a fit offensively to run that 5 out, spread that ball, have a lot of motion? Because that's a big thing that his offense is predicated on, is constant motion, filling the empty spot, where we saw stagnant ISO, nobody move ball last year. And in theory, if you get them all doing that, this is a much better looking offense. But a lot of things sound good in theory, and then they don't play out in practice because either people don't want to do it or they're not capable of doing it. So I think that's a big question mark with this hire. But I think you were going to have major question marks regardless of who you hired, based on the personalities that you have sitting there. I mean, let's be honest. Kevin Durant is a guy that has his own opinion. I mean, has a big opinion with things. Devin obviously has things he likes. Brad is, Bradley Beal. But one thing I do like when it comes to that is we've seen Mike Budenholzer have success in a myriad of ways with guys that aren't necessarily a true point guard. Drew Holiday, specifically himself, has said that. And I think we might have a tweet on this as well. So
Yeah, I think our friend Brendan Clean brought this up on Twitter. He said, one thing I like about Bud as a candidate for the Suns is the two most successful teams had Jeff Teague and Drew Holiday as their quote-unquote point guards. Definitely a lot of experience building a balanced offense without a traditional lead playmaker. And that's going to be huge because, as we've talked about, ever since the Suns made the Bradley Beal trade, your hands are tied in terms of what you can bring in terms of a starting point guard. Like, all you have this summer are trades with very heavy restrictions as a second tax apron team that, prevent a lot of flexibility, prevent you from stacking salaries to bring in a starting caliber point guard, or vet minimums, or the number 22 pick in the draft. So you're either looking at a rookie, a vet minimum guy, or trying to thread the needle on the perfect trade for a starting point guard. And I don't know that trade exists. So people need to understand that you're probably not going to have a traditional starting point guard next season. You might have a backup point guard, which is something they need, but it is good that Budenholzer has been able to build his offenses, tailor them to guys, his star players who are not traditional point guards. That was around Giannis and Chris Middleton. And then before that in Atlanta, it was, Al Horford, Paul Millsap, those guys. So that's encouraging to me, at least.
Yeah, and this is a guy that I don't think is going to celebrate 49 regular season wins.
No.
Because he is a extremely successful regular season coach, as you mentioned, extremely successful in the playoffs. And let's actually take a look at what his career stats are as a head coach here. Mike Budenholzer has a 484 and 317 record overall. He is the 20th best in wins in terms of playoffs in NBA history, two-time NBA Coach of the Year, and obviously he won that championship that we all like to forget about. But he is an extremely successful guy on the court, and this is the kind of pedigree you want. I know everybody was like, well, he's Frank Vogel at a championship. Well, there were a lot of questions there as well, but the longevity of Mike Budenholzer, his background, makes me pretty comfortable from that standpoint.
Yeah, it's one of those things where y'all wanted Frank Vogel fired, you got what you wanted, now we bring in Budenholzer. It's like, what are we doing? I don't get it. Like, they could have hired Ty Lue and there would still be people mad about some things. So, and I understand that Budenholzer, he's another guy that's been around the league. He's won one title. He's had playoff flameouts. I get it. But at the same time, he's also been to the mountaintop, and he's one of the very few head coaches on the market that can say that right now, that can say they're top 20 all time in playoff wins. He's got a track record for building successful teams, successful systems wherever he's gone throughout his NBA career. And that's only 2 stops, but multiple seasons in both places of doing that. So that's what's encouraging to me. And the fact that most of those teams were pretty well balanced, even though in Atlanta, especially down the stretch there, he didn't really have the horses to be an elite offense and an elite defense. Yeah. I think the Suns are close in terms of personnel. They definitely have things that they need to add to this roster to give him more defensive minded wings, to upgrade the center position, to give him, a backup ball handler, those things. But I think the foundation is there with this roster to be able to build something that's top 10 territory on both ends.
Well, and I mean, we say the one ring, but he has 4 more from his time as an assistant coach too. So this is a guy that's been a part of 5 championship teams. So the pedigree is there. I'm going to get into the PR part though.
Okay.
Because I love a good story, right?
Sure.
He was born in Holbrook. He grew up there. His family is royalty in Holbrook, Arizona. His mother was the mayor of the city. His father is a Hall of Fame high school coach there. He was a multiple sport athlete there. He grew up, and I actually have a quote from a Paul Coro article back in 2015. He said, the dream or goal was to play in college, Budenholzer said. That was exclusively my focus. I followed the Suns. They were my favorite team, but the NBA just wasn't where my skill set was. But I literally remember going into my backyard with my dad, teaching me Paul Westphal's moves, Sweet D, Walter Davis, Double A Alvin Adams, and listening to Al McCoy on calls. All right. I get that everybody can have an opinion, that everybody can be frustrated for whatever reason. Oh, we thought we were going to get Ty Lue, but you weren't. They're going to back up the Brinks truck in L.A. Right. Oh, why are we doing a retread? Well, because you don't want to put a first-time head coach or a guy that's never been on any bench in charge of a team that has 3 superstars that's trying to win in the next 2 years. But from a person standpoint, if you can't get behind rooting for a Mike Budenholzer to succeed, a guy who was part of the Spurs group, a hometown kid that had to go be part of the Spurs group that kicked your teeth in, wound up beating you as a Milwaukee Bucks coach. Do you not think there's a giant redemption arc that this guy can come home to his favorite team and try to win their first title? If he does that, not only is he a Holbrook legend, he's a goddamn legend in the state of Arizona. And I am all for a good story. And I know that doesn't have to do with basketball, but god damn it, personally, I love it.
I mean, nothing's gonna make up for that 2021 championship. I'm gonna say
if
that
he gets his own ring here,
if he gets it, but you can still look at 2021 and be like, you dude, like why?
Yeah, but at least he came back and made good, right? That's my hope.
If he comes back and he wins a championship here, like it makes it 90% easier. You still got that ting in there, but if you're like, okay, he came back and he made up for it, then
build him the goddamn statue.
Could have had to, but yeah, no.
Now you're the guy who complains about everything, Gerald.
I'm just saying. I'm not like gonna be like, no, it's a great hire because he's from Holbrook.
No,
like,
I didn't.
I'm sorry.
That's not what I'm saying.
I know.
I love a good story.
I know
if
you
it
do.
Works
you
out.
love a good story. I do too. But like at the end of the day, I don't care about any of that. I care about him coming in and being able to maximize this very limited window that we have with this current iteration. Hopefully he's here beyond that, but this very much does feel like we understand our window is this year, maybe the year after that. We need somebody who can come in right away like he did with the Bucks when they won, I think, like 60 games his first season. I think that's what you are hoping for here in Phoenix. You're hoping for Budenholzer to be able to come in and be like, yeah, I know what tempo we want to play at. I know how many threes we want to get up. I know how we're going to use the big three. I know how we're going to carve out a respectable defense, and we're going to go out and win. Like that's the biggest thing for me is last year there were so many moving parts. There were so many new guys on the roster, entirely new coaching staff. Brad Beal missing, 29 games or something like that. They never got into a consistent flow together. That's what Budenholzer has done throughout his career. He's established consistency. And so that's what I'm hoping for with this hire, that he comes in from day one, gets that buy-in, and is able to build something, especially with a team that has largely its core intact from last year.
So for the people that are complaining, saying it's a bad hire, and there's some in the chat, and again, you're allowed your feelings on that. Do you feel like there was some other perfect candidate out there that they overlooked or didn't hire? Because to me, I think anybody they were going to hire was going to have some deficiency coming in here, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I had put together the list. I know you guys had gone through potential replacement candidates, and there were some good candidates, and Mike Budenholzer was one of them, but every single one had like one or two drawbacks. Like, you look at a guy like Kenny Atkinson, there's the whole Kevin Durant angle to that. You look at Becky Hammond, people are going to be misogynistic about that because they don't know ball. Like, and the fact that she's got a job that she really likes with the Las Vegas Aces, more realistically in terms of actual drawbacks. Like every single candidate that we could have talked about, Ty Lue, guess what? The Clippers are going to keep him. They're going to offer him the biggest deal we've seen an NBA coach get to keep him there, especially with them undergoing a rebuild. So I don't know that there was a guy that was going to come in and everybody was going to be like, oh yeah, that's a definite upgrade. This is a guy I have no questions about. Like it's going to be that way for everybody. At least they got the guy who has the most proven track record, I think, of anyone outside of, and including Ty Lue, if we're going to be honest, because I mean, he's won a title, like so has Ty Lue, but they're on that equal footing in terms of one title, lots of regular season success, lots of playoff success. Like, I don't know what more you can really do if you're going to move on from Frank Vogel.
Well, and the last time that they stole the leading candidate for the Lakers job, they went to the finals.
Well, there you go.
I mean, Monty Williams was that guy for the Lakers. Suns swooped in, stole him, and went to the finals the next year. Yeah. Not saying that's going to happen. And somebody in the chat said this is Vogel 2.0. And sure, it may turn out that way. They may flame out. They may not be better. But I don't think he's the same guy, because on the surface, I kind of felt that way originally. And then you dig a little bit deeper, and I don't think this is a guy that, like we said earlier, comes in and doesn't have a very thought out, well laid out plan, and he's willing to be that voice in the locker room. Frank always felt, and I said this yesterday, like he was the dad trying to be the cool dad, the friend. And when it came time to be disciplinarian, they didn't take him seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're going to have that problem with Mike Budenholzer. I think he's going to come in and make it very clear, this is what we're doing, this is the culture, and this is what I believe in. And you may not agree, and we may butt heads, but I'm not going to be quiet about it just because you have 2 rings or you finished 5th in the MVP voting at some point or any of those things. I don't think he cares about those kind of things. I think he cares about, I value you as a player. I'm going to do what's best in my mind to put you in a position to succeed. And if you don't like some of those decisions, that's your prerogative, but I'm not going to back off what I believe.
Yeah, I think that authority and that accountability is going to be important because I think a lot of people on the Suns looked at Frank and they knew he was a good head coach and they liked the guy personally, but I don't know that he held the big 3 in check specifically. And I don't know that there was a lot of buy-in in terms of, yeah, this is the guy that's going to get us there. I think Budenholzer holds more authority in that way in terms of like, no, I know what's going to work. This is what we're going to do. And this is what you need to do, because Frank was more of a defensive minded guy. So I think defensively there was a buy-in. The fact that the Suns were 13th in defensive rating, despite having Jusuf Nurkic as their rim protector, despite not having a defensive piece outside of Kevin Durant. Like if Kevin Durant has to be your best offensive player and defensive player, you're not giving your coach the pieces to succeed. So the fact that they were 13th in defensive rating speaks to Vogel being good in that area. But Budenholzer is more balanced and he's more offensively inclined. And I want to read these numbers off real quick because they are encouraging, not just the 3-point numbers, but the fact that in pace, Mike Budenholzer has never had a team that has ranked below average in pace. It's always been 15th or higher.
Which was a problem last year.
Yeah, and with the Bucks, he was 5th, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 10th in pace, those Bucks teams. Offensive rating with the Bucks, he was never lower than 15th. It was 4th, 8th, 5th, 3rd, and 15th. So that speaks to what he's able to do when he has high-end talent, when he has a big 3 like he had in Milwaukee. And then defensively, he's been really good as well. There was one season with the Hawks where he was 24th because that wasn't a good team. But other than that, his teams have always been 15th or better. And with the Bucks, 1st, 9th, 14th, and 4th in defensive rating. So again, Milwaukee had the talent to be able to do those things. But the fact that his teams historically play at a fast tempo, historically get up a lot of threes, and historically are pretty good on both ends of the floor and top 10 in both categories in Milwaukee for the most part, that's what's encouraging to me is you can work with that. You can tweak your roster and make your adjustments because guess what? Shy of trading Kevin Durant, the big 3 isn't going anywhere. And that would be if things really sour over the summer that you're trading Kevin Durant. So those 3 guys are still going to be back. I know a lot of people right now are not high on them, and I get it, but they're probably going to be back next season. So what do you need? You need a coach who can optimize them, and hopefully Budenholzer is able to do that just as he's done in his last 2 stops.
We'll get into some of the big 3 and other things going on shortly, but if you yesterday at 2 p.m. when the news broke that Frank Vogel was released, went and placed a wager on who would be the next head coach of the Phoenix Suns, Mike Budenholzer was the odds-on favorite, and he wound up being the guy. And our friends over at BetMGM, they would have helped you out, win a little scratch if you had went that way. Super easy. All you have to do is use the sign-up code PHNX, and you're going to be able to get some great deals. If you bet at least $10 on the mobile app through the sportsbook, if you place a first wager on the BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app for at least $10, you're going to receive $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. It's just that easy. If you lose, you're getting up to $1,500 in bonus bets. And you know what? They've got a great promotion right now called the Grand Slam Jackpot promotion. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you bet on a guy to hit a home run, he hits a grand slam in that game, you're getting whatever the winnings in your bet was, but you're also taking home part of a $50,000 pot. So, for example, you bet on Corbin Carroll to go deep tonight. 9 other people do. He hits a grand slam in their game this evening. You're taking home $5K in addition to what you win on your bet. So again, sign up for the BetMGM Sportsbook app. Use that promo code PHNX. Bet $10 in that app on any regular sports bet. You're going to get up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Check out the show notes for full details. And now listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Bonus bets expire in 7 days. Bonus bets expire in 7 days. One new customer offer only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus only. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only. Subject to eligibility requirements. Bonus bets are non-withdrawable. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. See BetMGM.com for terms. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, North Carolina, Ontario, or Puerto Rico.
Get stuffed, Ontario, and all the haters out there. You know what? I'm going to welcome Frank Vogel. Welcome Frank Vogel into the unemployment line. I'm going to welcome Mike Budenholzer into my inner circle right now.
Okay.
You know what, Frank? You can stay in too. But Mike, welcome in. Our friends over at Circle K have you covered. Free, right? You can join the Inner Circle rewards by downloading the Circle K app. It's really just that simple. And then you sign up, and then you're going to be part of the best club that you can be a part of, right? It's America's thirst stop, and they want you to save by using the app. Right now, if you join the free membership program, you're going to save 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups, and then 3 cents after that. But it's not just that, right? If you get to the ESPO level, go tell them you want to be part of the ESPO level. They'll look at you like you're crazy, but you can get 5 cents off there. It's just that easy. And you know what? Thirst is going to meet its match this summer because our friends over at Circle K, and each member gets this special deal. You can get any size Polar Popper Froster, any size. You want to go like the extra large size? You can. You want to drink like 2 gallons of cola? You can. For 69 cents. All right, I don't know that it's 2 gallons, but you're going to get any size Polar Popper Froster for 69 cents. Nice. Now through September 3rd, find in the app under Inner Circle offers. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. I think one of the interesting things here, Gerald, is going to be how this staff fills out, right? Because last year, it was an odd situation. Frank Vogel gets hired. They basically say, here's Kevin Young, who's going to be number 2 on your bench after finishing number 2 in the coaching search. From what I understand from people close to the situation, Kevin Young never quite fit in with that group. It was a bunch of guys who had gone through the bubble together. Kevin Young obviously wasn't one of those guys. It was a weird situation, right? You hope Frank Vogel or Mike Budenholzer doesn't have to go through what Frank Vogel went through in that. And we heard in Shams Charania's report that David Fizdale will be moving from the bench into the front office. So I imagine it's cleaning house and letting Mike Budenholzer bring in his own staff. Reports yesterday from Woj said he'd been looking at building that staff. He has connections to one name that I find intriguing, Darvin Ham, who was just let go by the Lakers. Also connections to Kenny Atkinson, but I don't think he's leaving the Warriors for a lateral move. But I think this coaching staff is going to be a very important part of what goes on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we've been talking about this, like preparing for the situation where they did bring Vogel back. Kevin Young is gone now. That was Book's guy. That was the last kind of vestige of the offense the Suns used to run. So now you're looking at a whole new era, a whole new situation. And obviously we know that Budenholzer is an offensive-minded guy, but who are his lead assistants that he's going to bring in? Who is he going to look to for defensive things? Who is he going to look to for offensive things? Like it wouldn't surprise me if Darvin Ham is on the staff if he doesn't get any offers elsewhere coming off the Lakers firing. So that's a big thing to keep an eye on. And I know people love to get into the X's and O's and try and speculate on what assistant coaches do. Unfortunately, we don't really have a lot of insight into that. We hear things, but that's the extent of it. We're not even allowed in practices anymore as media, so we don't see what these assistant coaches are actually doing behind the scenes. But there are guys that have certain reputations. There are guys that have relationships with Mike Budenholzer. And the last thing that you want is another situation where you are filling certain holes with your guys, but not Mike Budenholzer's guys. You got to give him a chance to build out his entire coaching staff and not have these kind of pigeonholed additions or mainstays or leftovers from the last regime.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the main things of assistant coaches and your coaching staff is to support the vision and the culture part of it as well. Yes, they have specific things that they focus on, specific groups of players that they work with to try to get better at certain things. But I also think it's about shared vision, and they all, to use a cliche, are rowing in the same direction, right? Mike Budenholzer, like you said, has a vast wealth of people that he's worked with that understand what he does, that he can tap into in this. And I think that'll be very important because, and this is pure speculation, not inside information, but I always kind of wondered, Kevin Young and Frank Vogel, did they have that shared vision? Was that coaching staff, and I'm not saying that there was anything nefarious going on, but did they have the belief in each other, in the system, and what they were doing? Or was there even slight fractures in that just because of the lack of familiarity there that could cause additional issues with a team too? Because if your staff doesn't believe fully in what you're doing, how are you going to get the players to?
Yeah, and it's a question that we'll never have answered. Nope. I know publicly, Frank Vogel was saying that Kevin Young has been tremendous, 10 out of 10, all this stuff. He's not going to say otherwise to us publicly, obviously, but I never got the sense that was an issue, but it is just an inherently awkward dynamic where the guy that you were competing with for the main job that wanted the job you have is your number one or your number two lead assistant. Like, that's just kind of a weird dynamic there. So hopefully there's none of that on this coaching staff this time around, because you need that uniformity, especially once again bringing in a mostly entirely new staff, even with a group of guys that are basically all the same.
So let's turn our attention to the big three.
Okay.
I'm going to always do that because, but look, this is Kevin Durant's sixth coach in 6 years. This is Devin Booker's, I believe, sixth coach in 9 seasons going into this. Bradley Beal, I mean, it's again,
it's like
a new
5.
Yeah. And it's a new coach in his second year in this situation as well. Why do you think Frank Vogel can work with this group, and what do you think are the potential pitfalls?
You mean Budenholzer?
It should be. I keep doing it. Yeah, that's going to take a second. All right, we had 18 hours to process this.
We did.
How do you think Mike Budenholzer or the big three will respond? The big three will respond to Mike Budenholzer in positive or negative ways.
I don't know. And I don't want to like pin Vogel's firing on the big three alone, because a roster is more than just the big three. And I don't think that's what you were doing. No. But I want to be very clear that, like, I think the failures of the Suns it was a collective. It took a lot of pieces for that to fail and for them to, flame out in the first round in spectacular fashion the way that they did. But looking ahead to this new regime and the big three, there has to be better buy-in from those three. It can't just be, well, I want to kind of do my thing that's worked for me throughout my career, because I think we've seen Devin Booker change his game in ways that he's had to, but he's also kind of been hesitant to take more threes because he's used to playing in the mid-range. We've seen, Kevin Durant's a guy, like, he's a purebred hooper. He just kind of wants to roll the ball out there and get to his spots and hoop in that way. And to your point about Budenholzer and this motion offense, this 5-out offense, that's a very stark contrast to what Kevin Durant is used to doing. So there is going to have to be some give and take there. I think they still need to figure out Bradley Beal, like what the plan is with that. Are they going to have a multiple ball handler attack like was originally the plan last year? Will Budenholzer be able to execute that? Will he want to put the ball in either Book or Brad's hands? I'm hoping that he's versatile in the approach, because I still think there is something to having all three of those guys initiate and having them be interchangeable on the floor. But it is going to take a mental buy-in that we didn't really see, especially down the stretch under Vogel. So it is going to be on them. They have to be better on the court, off the court, as leaders in the locker room, every function. Like, they just have to be better than they were last year, because the lead by example thing is good. But we saw how much they needed kind of some locker room fire, some on the court passion in some spaces. And we saw just on the court from an X's and O's standpoint, it looked great in some spurts. And then there were some spurts where it devolved and got a little too stagnant, a little too ISO heavy. So I am really curious to see how they are willing to function, willing to change things up, willing to take more threes, and move off the ball and all these different things that I don't think we really saw last year. And that's addition to the fact that like you have to address your real needs as a roster from a front office perspective. So there was a funny tweet from our guy Shrieker that I think we have, that he had said the Suns getting ready to run it back with the same starting five, but a new coach. It's a guy who's taken a picture from different angles, and it's a toothpick in one picture. A toothpick changes everything. Mike Budenholzer can't be the toothpick here.
No,
like you have to change things aside from just the head coaching thing, because Mike Budenholzer is not going to come in and magically fix everything.
Well, we said that. Lindsay and I were talking about that yesterday. Sure, Frank's the fall guy, but Frank was only one small portion of a larger issue. I think there's multiple things you've got to look at. The roster, I think you need a pick and pop rim rolling big, because especially in this offense, I don't know how Nurkic's going to necessarily play. You're going to need defensive wings, and that was going to be whoever you hired here. You're going to need to add that in. And there's one other thing that we'll talk about in a second that I think you're going to have to consider. But you bring up leading by example, and if that example isn't a great one, it's not an effective way to go about it. And at times last year, it wasn't an effective one. I do wonder. I feel like Devin Booker could thrive in a motion offense, honestly. And I'm sure there still will be opportunity for some of his mid-range shots and some of the things that he does well when he drives. But we've also seen a propensity for him to be a really good three-point shooter. Maybe not great, not as Steph Curry, but a really good three-point shooter that isn't afraid to pull from deep, which could really work in this. I think Bradley Beal in a motion offense becomes very intriguing to get him involved and moving. Grayson Allen is a guy that can have success in that. The question is, what other pieces are around them? But I'm concerned with the Kevin Durant buy-in portion, and there's multiple reasons. But Kendrick Perkins brought up one yesterday, and we have the quote here. He said, quote, Frank Vogel gets fired after his first season, all because a two-time NBA champion, two-time NBA Finals MVP, and Kevin Durant wasn't speaking to the man and listening to Frank for the last 3 months, and all of a sudden it becomes a ripple effect. Now, I always take what Perk says with a grain of salt, because, I mean, I don't know. I mean, could it be a game of telephone? I mean, we know he played with KD, but also,
but they don't have a good
no,
relationship.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a bone to pick there as well, but he obviously knows people that know KD too. So I'm going to highly doubt he didn't say a word to Frank Vogel for 3 months. He's not Monty Williams with DeAndre Ayton, but come on. But I think I'm sure there was a rift there. I'll say that.
I think there's truth to some of the reports we've been hearing about KD didn't like how he was being used, and we can debate whether he was being used correctly. I think there were some instances where he was playing off the ball too much, where they weren't using him correctly. I also think there's a case to be made that, maybe he doesn't want to be running around as much. Maybe he just wants to get the ball in his spots, because he's been playing this way since Brooklyn, basically. And Golden State was the last time that a team really knew how to optimize him. So I think he did quietly take issue with some of the ways he was being used. I think in his mind, as he told us, the coach is the leader. So in his mind, I'm not the leader. He's the leader. If something goes bad, it's on him. So hopefully Budenholzer is able to come in and be more of that leader. But I do think there's probably truth to the idea that even if Frank Vogel didn't lose the entire locker room, I'm pretty sure he lost KD, because that report after the Clippers game when they were down 35-4 and Frank Vogel goes on his tirade, and we're hearing about, like players rolling their eyes or stifling laughter. Like, yeah, we know who that is.
Well, and again, if you lead by example and that example is not right, it can lead to a locker room that's fractured in some ways.
It can. And I'm not just
putting
KD.
At the feet of KD either, but
because that's leadership too.
Yeah, I do have a concern here. And I'm probably going to get called a hater. And I may share something that I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, here we go.
look, I don't think Mike Budenholzer was Kevin Durant's guy. In
Okay.
fact, I think Chauncey Billups was the guy he was pushing for.
Mhm.
This is not the kind of offense that Kevin Durant likes. This is not, I had a former NBA coach say that to me yesterday, that this isn't the kind of offense that is a Kevin Durant kind of offense. That concerns me because if Kevin Durant isn't happy, the Phoenix Suns are going to have similar problems to what they had last year. And I don't know that you can weather that storm if that's the case, because he is obviously such an important part on both ends of the floor. And if he's not fully bought in, they will struggle. And that makes me wonder what this summer holds and what might or might not happen. And it also is interesting that if he was championing for Chauncey Billups, and it's speculation, I heard rumblings, I don't have anything confirmed, but and he didn't get his guy, does that already started off on the wrong foot? And all these things concern me because we've heard all sorts of things when it comes to Kevin Durant. And I'm not putting it all on KD.
Right.
This was a massive failure across the board. And like we talked about, Frank owns part of it. Devin Booker owns part of it. Bradley Beal owns part of it. Matt Ishbia owns part of it. And James Jones does. And Kevin Durant does as well. If you want to wear the crown and you want to be the guy that's the big, the big name, you hold part of the responsibility as well. And we know that Kevin Durant can be upset at coaches at times. So that's my main concern here. Can Mike Budenholzer get full buy-in from Kevin Durant on his offensive system and what he's trying to do defensively? And if he can, you're in for a great season. If he can't, I think you're in for a season that was very much like last season, and it gives you pause about what this offseason holds.
It'll be interesting to watch because I think there will be buy-in at first, and I think if the results follow, there'll be buy-in that's sustained throughout. But if that falls off, or if the Suns get off to a slow start again, or if there are injuries early in the year and KD, like he did at the start of this season, has to carry an immense load on both ends, that's a difficult thing to sustain that buy-in, I think. And that's not even just a KD thing. That's a superstar player in the NBA in general thing. So I am curious about that because I think Budenholzer, in terms of what he'll be able to do offensively, I think it might be somewhat similar to how he was able to be optimized in Golden State, maybe where a lot of the other guys like the Steph Curry and Draymond Green pick and roll, okay, that doesn't work. Guess what? We have Kevin Durant as the release valve who's going to get buckets on you. If you can figure out something similar to that, to where KD is used the way that he's liked, but it bridges the gap between we need a bucket here and we want to run some things on offense and get the motion up, I think you could have something really special here. But there is that concern that maybe Budenholzer wasn't his guy. There's that concern that KD is eligible for an extension this summer. And if the Suns aren't willing to extend a guy who's going to be turning 36 soon for max money for multiple years, does he feel some type of way about that? There's a lot of reasons to, and just looking at the big three as a whole, if you were to trade one of the big three, it's not going to be the face of your franchise who's 7 or 8 years younger, even if he's not the same caliber player as Kevin Durant. And it's not going to be Bradley Beal because he has the no trade clause, and very few teams are going to want to take that contract on anyway. So Kevin Durant would be the most tradable in theory of those three. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Hopefully there's just buy-in from day one. Yep. And behind the scenes, Kevin Durant's like, yeah, I wanted so-and-so, but we got Budenholzer. I'm good with it. And we don't have to worry about this. But it is something to keep an eye on because we've seen in the past the way that, coaches have cycled through here in Phoenix, in Brooklyn when KD was there. So hopefully it's not an issue, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, and that's not to say KD is a malcontent or an outlier. I mean, that's player empowerment right now, as the players have a lot to say about who the head coach is. And that's part of why if he was championing for somebody else, you got to wonder, hopefully Mike Budenholzer can win him over. One thing that Mike Budenholzer is going to need.
What's that?
he's going to need a place to put that 8-figure salary that he's supposedly about to get. And I've got something that you should like, Mike. It's our friends over at Desert Financial Credit Union, because like your family, they've been in Arizona for a very long time, for 84 years, in fact. Desert Financial has been Arizona's largest and most trusted local credit union, dedicated to creating exceptional experiences by giving back to the community and providing financial solutions that make lives better. The Desert Financial team are financial experts who are committed to their members in the community, offering financial solutions tailored to helping real people like you, Mike Budenholzer, achieve your financial goals and dreams, which I think you may have with this contract. So maybe you don't need that part. Look to Desert Financial for checking and savings accounts. You'll probably need multiple, because I'm sure there's a limit of how many millions you can put into them. You can get mortgages, which you're going to need a new house. I don't know if you're going to need a mortgage. Loans, you definitely don't need that. You can give those to people. Credit cards, investment options, you should look into that, Mike, and much more. Join a credit union that is committed to giving back to the community, even Holbrook, and sharing success with members. When you open a free checking account online, get 200 in bonuses, and Mike, you can send that right to me because you don't need it at this point. And get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200. And Mike, you're going to need a good pair of sunglasses, because unlike Milwaukee, where I lived for 6 months myself, the sun actually comes out here. You probably remember that, Mike. So you're going to need a good pair of sunglasses, and our friends over at Shady Rays have you covered. You're going to get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank, Mike. You got all this money, but it doesn't mean you have to spend it all on sunglasses. You can get quality at a great price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. That's more than lived in San Antonio when you were there, Mike. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find one that's the perfect match for you, Mike. Use your, I've loved Shady Rays. I've had a pair for a while. I broke a pair, they replaced them. I lost a pair, they replaced them. Nice. Their replacement and lost guarantee is unbelievable. Just fantastic. So if you don't love your shades, you can change them for a new pair too, or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. So exclusively for our listeners and viewers, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal this season. Head to shadyrays.com and use that promo code PHNX for 35% off polarized sunglasses, Mike. So I'm even saving you some more scratch. Try for yourself the shades that are rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. One of the other things that we briefly touched on that Shams mentioned in his report is that David Fizdale is going to move to the front office. There were reports yesterday about front office shakeups coming, that James Jones will remain, but maybe not in his current role. What do you think that needs to be done with the front office? And do you like Fizdale, who had been in front office before making that move?
Sure. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm not inherently familiar with what David Fizdale did during his time in the front office, and I don't think many people would be able to realistically speak to that anyway.
Lots of numbers crunching, lots of data.
Take that for dad.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you can still use that. He's still here. So.
I can. I'm very glad. We do. By the way, we were originally planning to be at a golf tournament today, so we did pre-record to take that for data for today's normal 3 p.m. show. So make sure to check that out later today. Most of it is still relevant in terms of optimizing the big 3, even with the Vogel news dropping literally an hour after we recorded that thing. But make sure to check that out. But I do think there is something to, okay, if James Jones is taking a step back from one of his duties, if he, just focuses on president of basketball ops instead of that and GM, who are you bringing in as a GM? Are you going to bring in someone that gives a damn about the draft, or in the interview, do you have to say F them kids 100 times to be considered for the job? I want to see someone brought in who is going to put time, energy, resources into scouting for the draft. That's what every NBA team does, except for seemingly this one. And again, I get it. They believe they can turn draft picks into players who can help them win now. They understand their window is right now. But you can do 2 things at the same time. You can add someone in the draft who can contribute from day one, but who can also grow with you on a rookie scale contract without having to give them an extension for 3 to 4 years. Those are important team building avenues. And it feels like the Suns have either completely ignored it or whiffed on a lot of the picks that they've made when they've actually made them. So that's the thing. And I keep seeing people saying, I can't wait till we blow it up. We should just trade the whole big three. First of all, this ownership's not doing that. So you guys got to get that out of your head. Second of all, I don't know if you remember that last decade before Devin Booker got here, but hitting on the draft is not always a guarantee. It takes time. It takes a lot of pain and suffering and horrible losing, unfun seasons to get where we finally got.
And dumb luck, because they didn't want Devin Booker.
Right.
They wanted Frank Kaminsky. And I love Frank. But if you had done that, you still would be in basketball hell.
Right. So as much as we're talking about blow it up and all this other stuff, A, it's not going to happen. And B, if it does, it's going to be a painful, long rebuilding process. So I hope you're on board for that with us as well if that happens.
And C, if you blow it up, all your picks are pick swaps right now or traded elsewhere.
Right.
So you don't even benefit from it. So you ain't doing that.
Yeah, you're depending on other people's picks at that point, which is never a good thing. But no, I think there could be something to that, because I think there's been a lot of questions about James Jones's role and how much of it is Ishbia, how much of it is James Jones, how much of it was Sarver from beforehand. There's just always been these questions, and it would be nice to just kind of solidify that and say he's the president of basketball ops. He can focus on those player and personnel relationships, which is something that James Jones is very good at. And now we bring in a GM, maybe someone with a little more experience on that front, and they can collaborate together, because that brain trust does collaborate on a lot of this stuff. So it will be interesting to see what Fizdale's role is specifically, whether this enables James Jones to kind of take a step back, whether they bring in someone else as well. These are all a lot of things to keep an eye on. And hopefully, I know people are going to spin it as new owner syndrome. He's changing up stuff again, but a lot of this stuff that's being changed had to change. If Frank Vogel lost the locker room, you had to make a change there. If David Fizdale is good at what he does and you want to keep him on, good, make that change there. If James Jones, you want to solidify his role and take something off his plate so you can be better as a team with drafting, with free agency, with trades, all that stuff, good, do those things. And I'm glad that they're being thorough with that.
Yeah. Bob Myers, we've got Matt Ishbia on line one, maybe. That's still a name I'm fascinated with. I don't know that will happen. We have been assured by at least one member of the media here in Phoenix it won't be Isaiah Thomas appearing out of the shadows to take over more of a role in the front office. So plenty still to come this offseason that we're going to be looking at. Hey, if you're in here, do us a favor. Hit the like. Mm-hmm. That's all you got to do. I don't need you. If you want to drop a super chat, great. But hit the like. It's free. It helps us. We appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel while you're here as well. Speaking of super chats, let's take a look at a few of them. Psycho Blue says, Coach Bud needs to introduce his coaching staff as his real men of genius day one. Camp. Tell Book and KD this 2021 title ring means you're both my bitch. In a raspy Scott Steiner shouting, but I mean, to be fair, he did beat both of them along the way, so
I don't think you do that day one.
Now,
maybe
Book,
day 3.
when you spin away, look.
Hey, we've known each other a while now. You're all my bitches, all right?
Yeah, maybe don't.
I mean, imagine Book talks back and he's like, hey, when you spin away from the post, make sure you see if a double team is coming first.
Hey, when you throw that lob to whoever our center is this year, do it quicker so Giannis can't get his hand on it, all right? And then he just flashes the ring. I mean, look, he could do a Pat Riley where he brings the bag in with 5 rings and just drops it on the table. I don't know it has the same effect, though.
I don't know if 4 of them are as an assistant. I don't know if it has the same effect as a Pat Riley, but
Katie throws his 2 on the table.
Book just stares at the table. Look, I mean that one, he can hold it over both of them. I did beat both of you on the way to this. Mm-hmm. Arizona 88 says, what a coincidence. I called you yesterday about Mike being the head coach. I assume you mean chatted, but yeah.
I mean Insider Arizona 88.
I didn't get a call, Arizona.
You didn't?
88.
I mean,
I did not.
I did. I answered and I didn't know who it was. But thank you for the tip on Mike.
Going to be the next head coach.
I have a particular set of skills, and they are knowing who the next coach of the Phoenix Suns will be. Libertarian Sasquatch says, "Why didn't we hire the perfect coach? I'm mad."
It's basically
outrage. I mean, that's the internet, though. Outrage for outrage's sake. Leo says, I'm so disappointed. Should have been Gerald Bourguet instead of Budenholzer.
Leo, I love you, but I would have been fired by November.
Somebody
got the bag, though.
Somebody suggested me yesterday. I'm like, that would be the worst. I got thrown out of a 7th grade flag football game I coached.
These guys have forgotten more about basketball than most of us will ever know.
They should let the entirety of the podcast coach the summer league team just for content. Just for content.
Give me one game with the G League, and you'll see why you don't want me in the NBA.
Take the charge.
Psycho Blue returns with the big concern about the big three and how they like to play mid-range is that 3 counts more than 2, and if they can't do that, they're dinosaurs forever. I agree.
Yeah, we can't be the only team that's zagging while everyone else zigs.
But if KD wants to stay in the mid range because he doesn't want to change because he's older, whatever. But like Beal and Book, they should still be malleable because they're in the primes of their career.
You can't have playoff games where you're taking 25 threes in a game.
No,
like it just can't happen unless you're making 24 of them.
But
like, I'm not here for it anymore. We live in a modern NBA now where you have to have a steady diet of threes. Like you just have to.
I left the tinfoil hat in the office, but I'm still going to put on the metaphorical one here. If there was truly as much of a rift as it sounds like there may have been with Frank Vogel, and he comes out and says, we're going to shoot 43s, and they shoot 24 in a game,
we're going to know.
You think that might have been a spiteful thing? We've seen Kobe not shoot for an entire second half out of spite.
We're going to know. We're going to know either that Vogel couldn't get the buy-in and Budenholzer can, or we're going to know that fundamentally the big three does not want to play a certain way. Because Vogel told us so many times, we want to get up 30, 40 threes a game. They never did.
Yeah.
So,
well, buckle up because we're really just 18 hours into this crazy offseason that I'm sure will include more changes, more roster changes, all sorts of rumors and drama, and we'll be here for all of it. And we'll also be here when Mike Budenholzer is officially announced as the Phoenix Suns' new head coach with all the coverage of the press conference that you could want, including, I'm sure, potentially some interviews with Mike Budenholzer himself. So stay with us for all that. We may or may not be going back out to a golf tournament, but you can watch Gerald at 3 p.m. on Take That for Data. Ignore the not knowing Mike Budenholzer is the coach, but everything else.
Or Frank Vogel being fired.
Either. You know what? 18 hours, a lot can happen, apparently, but watch that at 3 p.m. And follow Gerald at Gerald Bourguet on Twitter. You can follow me at Espo. You can follow the show at PHNX_Suns. Is there anything you had, Eric?
Yeah, the biggest news of the day. There's already a Mike Budenholzer parody account.
Oh, there's 4 of them. They started.
They started
tweeting me last night. So buckle in. We got that to look forward to this offseason as well. One last super chat from James Johnson. Great hire. Now get a point guard and replace Nurk with a rim roller or a spacer. Thanks, gents, for ending your golf game early. Didn't even start it. May start it right after this. I'm not sure. So for Gerald, for Eric behind the Mac, our friend White Noise, and myself, Espo, remember, there was no perfect coach, but at least this guy grew up in Arizona. Ahoy, hoy.
We all silly like the mayor.